Hey y'all, and welcome back to Cooking with Kiana. Today I'm showing y'all how to make this delicious Sunday dinner meal from start to finish. After you've done a little bit of prep work, this will literally only take you about 30 minutes to make. So stay tuned if you want to learn how to make this quick and easy, delicious, soul food style Sunday dinner. So for today's menu, I'm going to be making some juicy baked leg quarters, creamy baked macaroni and cheese, and some southern style greens. Now let's get started. So first I'm going to start off with my greens since they take the longest to make, and I'm going to be using some smoked ham hocks and some onions to give this some additional flavor. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the smoked ham hocks and the onion into the slow cooker. Then I'm going to add enough water into the slow cooker to cover up my ham hocks. Then I'm going to cover this with a lid and let it cook on high for about 4 hours until those ham hocks are nice and tender. You can also boil this on top of the stove for about 2 to 3 hours. So for the greens, I'm going to be using kale, and this is honestly because they didn't have any collard greens at the store and I didn't feel like going to another one. Even though on the package it says that these greens have already been pre-washed, I'm going to go ahead and soak it in some water and add 1/4 of a cup of distilled vinegar to that water and let that soak for about 15 minutes. Even though these greens already come pre-washed, you never know what type of old bugs or dirt that could just be sitting on these greens, so you want to make sure you wash them off first. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure they're fully submerged in the water, and after 15 minutes I'm going to go ahead and drain out that water. If you have a pasta drainer, you can go ahead and add your greens into that to make it a little bit easier. Once that is fully drained, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process and go ahead and rinse them off, except this time I'm not going to add the vinegar. I'm just going to go ahead and rinse them off with some cold water, and then I'm going to go ahead and drain that water out, and then I'm going to repeat that step one more time. So in total, I did this for about 3 times. Now once you're all done draining your greens, you're going to go ahead and set that aside so it can dry. Alright, so since my ham hock has been cooking in the slow cooker for about 4 hours, it is nice and tender. I'm going to go ahead and remove that along with the onions out of my slow cooker so I can go ahead and cut them up. And since our ham hocks and onions has been sitting in that water cooking for about 4 hours, you got this beautiful stock. You are not going to throw this out, okay? This is your flavor. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add a chicken bouillon cube into this, and then I'm going to cover this up, and then we could get started on the preparation of frying up our collard greens. Alright, so first we're going to start off with our ham hocks, and we're going to go ahead and remove as much meat as possible from that bone. Now once I remove that meat, I'm just going to go ahead and roughly chop these up. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to my onion. So I'm going to roughly chop these into big chunks. Don't worry, this doesn't have to be small because I'm just going to go ahead and pop this right back into the slow cooker along with those ham hocks bones as well. That way that stock could be super flavorful and infused with that ham hock flavor. I'm going to close that up and let that cook. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and work on frying these greens. You're going to need to dice 1 large onion and 1 bell pepper, as well as 4 cloves of garlic. And here are all the seasonings I'm going to be using for these greens. For exact measurements, be sure to check out that description box. I have the full recipe listed there along with all of the other recipes throughout this video. I'm going to start off by adding a generous amount of oil into a large pan. I'm going to go ahead and let that come up to temperature. Then I'm going to add in my onions and peppers, and I'm going to go ahead and give that a good stir until they are nice and translucent and they have softened up a bit. Now I'm going to add in that chopped up ham hocks, and I'm going to go ahead and stir that in so some of that fat can render off and we could cook our greens in that fat so it could become nice and flavorful. So next we're going to go ahead and add in our garlic, and I'm just going to go ahead and stir that for about 90 seconds because you know garlic only take about 90 seconds to cook before it starts to burn. So after you have let everything fry for about 5 minutes, you're going to go ahead and add in your kale greens. Now after you add these in, you're going to go ahead and stir these around, and if you notice, they are going to start to wilt down and turn into nothing, just like spinach does. So once it gets to that point, that is when we're going to go ahead and remove everything over and transfer it into our crock pot. Now, if you want to cook this on top of the stove, that is when you're going to take everything from the crock pot and add it into your pot. Me, personally, I prefer to use the crock pot so I can just set it and go and not have to worry about keep checking on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure it's fully submerged in that broth, and then we can start seasoning. I'm going to season this up with 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of Lawrys seasoning salt, a teaspoon of all-purpose seasoning, and 2 teaspoons of crushed red pepper. Now, I do not measure my seasonings, but just for the purpose of this video, I measured everything out so you guys have a guide of how much to use. You can always use less or more depending on your preferences, but you just want to keep in mind if you want to add some more seasoning, make sure you add that in later after everything has simmered down. To get out some of that bitterness from the kale, I like to add a tablespoon of sugar and about 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. I also add in a tablespoon of Scotch bonnet pepper hot sauce. If you guys don't have the Scotch bonnet pepper hot sauce, you can just use any hot sauce of your choice, but the Scotch bonnet pepper hot sauce gives it a nice kick. Now I'm going to go ahead and stir everything together until it is well combined, and then I'm going to pop the lid on top and let that cook on high for about 2 to 3 hours. If you want to cook this on low, you're going to let that cook for about 5 hours. Once it's all done, you're going to have these tender, juicy, and full of flavor greens. And to be honest, these kale greens look exactly like collard greens and they taste exactly like them as well. To be honest, the kale greens might have even tasted a little bit better. Alright, so now let's move on to the easy stuff. So right here I have a leg quarter. I already went ahead and washed this off and got rid of some of the fat, and of course I left some of that on for flavor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut about 3 slits into my leg quarters because they are big, and I want to make sure I get that seasoning deeply penetrated into my leg quarters. So now I'm going to go ahead and add those into a pan lined with foil, and then I'm going to go in and add a generous amount of oil. After I add in the oil, I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of sofrito and a teaspoon of adobo seasoning. If you don't have adobo seasoning, you can just use any all-purpose seasoning of your choice. I'm also going to add a sazon packet as well, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and a teaspoon of onion powder. Now, if you guys are enjoying these recipes so far, go ahead and hit a like and subscribe to my channel. I post delicious recipes every week that the whole family will enjoy that are super easy to make. If that's something you're interested in, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Now I'm going to go in with a teaspoon of chili powder, and then I'm going to follow that up with 2 teaspoons of Cajun seasoning. Then lastly, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of basil leaves, and then I'm going to go in with my hands and mix everything together. Make sure I get up under that skin and make sure I get those slits as well. And I'm going to pop this in the oven on 350 for about 40 minutes. Once it's done out the oven, you're going to have this juicy baked chicken that literally took you less than 15 minutes to prepare. Now let's move on to the baked mac and cheese. You want to start off by adding your pasta to some boiling hot water and letting that boil for about 7 to 8 minutes until that is nice and al dente. You want to make sure you stir that occasionally so your pasta noodles do not stick together. Once your pasta is all done, you're going to go ahead and drain that out, and then you're going to add that pasta right into your casserole dish. Since your pasta is piping hot, you're going to go ahead and add in about 3 tablespoons of butter and give that a stir until that melts. Now I'm going to add in all my cheeses so that residual heat from the pasta can melt my cheeses. I'm going to use 2 8-ounce blocks of sharp cheddar cheese, and then I'm going to use an 8-ounce bag of cheddar cheese. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix that all together until those cheeses melt. And now I'm going to add in a can of cheddar cheese soup. Now this is because I'm not using a roux, alright? I'm also going to add in a can of cream of mushroom, y'all. And do not knock it until you try it. I promise it's going to make your mac and cheese nice and creamy. And trust me, it will not make your mac and cheese taste like mushrooms. Okay, so now we're going to go in with our seasonings. I'm going to be seasoning this up with a teaspoon of Lawrys seasoning salt, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder. Then I'm going to add in a teaspoon and a half of paprika for color. and a teaspoon of black pepper. Then I'm going to add in a tablespoon of sugar just to balance everything out. Now let's move on to our custard. I'm going to add 1 egg into a bowl and whisk that until that is well combined. And I'm going to add in a cup of evaporated milk and then a cup of heavy cream. Then I'm going to go ahead and whisk that all together until that is well combined as well. So now that my custard is all done, I'm going to go ahead and pour this into my mac and cheese. And then I'm going to go ahead and stir that all together until it is a nice creamy and smooth consistency. And don't worry guys, this will definitely thicken up in the oven since we added that egg in there, okay? Do not believe what they tell you about eggs and mac and cheese. When done correctly, it's actually really good. This mac and cheese is going to be together like a casserole. However, it's going to be nice and cheesy and creamy in the inside without being dry. Okay, so once you're done, you're going to go ahead and smooth that out so it's level, and then you're going to add some more cheese on top. I also like to add a little bit of paprika on top for color. And then once we're done, we're going to go ahead and wrap this in foil tightly, and then we're going to pop this in the oven on 350 for about 40 minutes. After 40 minutes, go ahead and remove that foil and broil this on high for about 1 to 3 minutes. The goal is just to make sure it's nice and brown and bubbly on top. Make sure you pay close attention to this when it's broiling, alright? So don't be leaving and going somewhere else when you come back because it will burn. And when you're done, you're going to have this creamy, delicious mac and cheese, guys. I didn't even let this sit because it just looked so good. I just wanted to cut right into it. Of course, if you let that mac and cheese set, it's going to be more like a casserole. Either way, this mac and cheese was absolutely delicious. It did not last long in my house, okay? It was the first thing to go. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. Hey, let me know in the comment section below which one was your favorite recipe. And make sure you guys check the description box. I will have all of these recipes written there. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.